My name is Marcus Fairs. I'm founder and editor-in-chief of Dezeen, the online architecture and design magazine. I must admit, this is the strangest talk venue I've ever been involved in. We were even joking before that we should just up the weirdness by talking in an invented language. So
why not?
Tak, tak?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Why?
Anyway, let me introduce tonight's talk. The theme is how can craft support new ways of living and working in a high-tech future? And the talk's been brought to you by Aritco, which is a lift manufacturer. And on the stage here we have Fredrik Färg. Did I pronounce this?
Yeah, that was pretty well.
Färg, I was calling you up until very recently. Who's part of the young design duo Färg and Blanche.
Yeah, good.
Swedish-French?
Yeah, French-Swedish.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. French-Swedish.
Or, yeah, that's...
and actually...
Emma comes first.
We have Dezeen has a rule of no male-only panels, but since Emma got sick...
Yeah.
And since you've got long hair...
That's okay, I'm replacing her very well.
You just have to talk in a high-pitched voice. and in the tuck. Yeah.
And we all
I told you it was going to get weird. Okay. And then we have Marco Cecchi. Did I pronounce that right?
Almost. Keki.
Keki. That was not even close to...
It's okay. Yeah.
You're too kind. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a co-founder and partner at Studio Stockholm Architecture, working with product design, interiors, and architecture.
Thank you very much. And finally, Alexander Lervik. And Alexander, tell us a little bit about yourself and also the Aritco lift connection, because you've been working with them for a couple of years, right? Yes. So you can explain to us why a high-tech lift company has got us all into an Alice in Wonderland house in the old part of Stockholm whilst you're about to eat some cabbage. I can't wait to hear the rationale behind all this.
And I have no answer.
Okay, moving swiftly along.
I can do that answer later.
Okay, right.
Then we'll let him do it. No, I'm a designer also. Have been working with Aritco for 6 years. I won a competition about designing the world's first home lift. And
which is?
Yeah, you can see it there. And the reason we are in the house is that I think recently they started talking about collaboration.
Yes, with us.
Yeah, and that, of course, we want to be in this fantastic house to see it.
And what is this house? What's the connection with this house?
So this is Emma's grandmother's grandfather's house, which was built in 1889 for his home and also his crisp bread factory. So actually you are standing or sitting at this moment on top of the factory, and this was his apartment.
A crisp bread factory?
Yeah.
So it's like the Swedish fancy then, isn't it? It's like a smorgasbord factory almost.
Definitely. And you can't imagine how many stories, because it's been in her family until today. It's the 5th generation of family that had been in this house until...
And I was wandering around earlier, and there's a lot of... is this your work all just dotted around the...
Yeah, all the works which is modern, like in this house, is our work. And we set together an exhibition only for this week, and also being inspired by this place and also the history of Emma's family.
Yeah. So like I told you, the weirdest talk I've ever done. So what we're going to do is this. Each of the designers is going to give a short presentation about their work, and then we're going to have a discussion. And the topic really is about what is the future of craft? You know, we're living in a high-tech world. We're all online. You know, machinery is and AI are all the things that we're talking about. And yet, companies still want handcrafted stuff. There's still a demand for the handmade, and you see that on car interiors, for example, and you see that in the upcoming collaboration with you and Aritco. So I think, Alexander, you're going to kick us off and just give a little short introduction to your work.
Yeah, and then I hope I can use this. Yeah. I will talk a bit about 3D printing and my relation to that. This is a lamp I made in 2007. And that's a copy of my own brain. I scanned it in a MR scanner and printed it in a 3D printer. And I noticed that technique in late 90s when I start making prototypes with 3D printing. And the reason I talk about it now is that I believe we will see the same effect that was in the graphic industry in the late 90s, where or even earlier in the 80s, where the computer program Photoshop and all the graphic Cork Express and others change the production in that industry completely, and we can now see it in for us in our industry that it will make a huge change with 3D printing and also laser and make-a-boot stuff. And 10 years ago, I had a lecture about 3D printing and how that will change the world with these technologies. It was a TED talk, and my thesis was that we as a designer will come in the same situation as the music industry did in the 90s, that people start downloading our products and then print them, and we can't get paid the normal way. So I guess we will see someday a Spotify for our industry, that you get paid in another way, that people print and then we get per print paid. So this is one of the project I did a couple of years ago. It's jewelry made in a 3D printer in metal. And what I think about this is that when these machines get down in pricing, we will see that they reach the market in a much bigger way, that when they reach the just common persons out in the society, the interest of craft will raise, and because of that, more people work with it and try to do it themselves. Then also the understanding of the real craft, the made by hand, will grow in another direction. Yesterday I got a machine, a laser cutter in my office, and my wife said that I haven't been that happy for all spring. It was a toy for me now, but I make prototypes with it. And when you see the easiness in that and how you can change material and make your own version really quickly, I can believe that here is the elevator that Aritco produce, that we can like personalize everything in the future, and that because of that the craft will be even closer to the end consumer. Also, so to stop this short talk, the conclusion of it is that this is a sofa I made for a Finnish brand, Adea. I believe that this real craft, when you see the hand made by hand, will also be even more exclusive and more expensive maybe in the auction market in the end, because of that. When so many people do so much craft digital, then the real stuff made by hand that the robots can't do, for example this wiring of the leather stripes here. I talked with a scientist at the ABB Robotics, and they said that the robot can never do, because of that the human hand needs to stretch and have it perfectly done. So it is parts of the craft that always will end up with a human hand. So that was me.
And what to you is the definition of craft? Is it something that's been done with the human hand?
No, it can be made by a machine, but I think that it will be different kinds of crafts and that the handmade, that's really made by hand, will be more exclusive in the
That makes this conversation a little bit more complicated, because if a robot makes something and it's craft, then that doesn't leave much space for people like you, Fredrik. Does it?
Maybe the hand need a machine to do stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like, so it could be a combination. Maybe we will control the robots like in a weird way in the future. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny, when you started to talk about the lifts and you showed the picture of the lift button, it reminded me, Thomas Heatherwick just completed this shopping centre in London called Coal Drops Yard, which was a former delivery area for the railways where they would store coal. And you must have seen it. It has these overhanging roofs that are kind of like curved like this. And halfway through the project, they cut the budget. And he said, "You're not allowed to spend any money on the lifts." And he was like, "Oh, no, we had such cool ideas for the lifts." They were like, "No, you can't do it." So they put all of the spare budget they had into the buttons for the lift. So the lifts themselves are just bog standard engineered things, like, metal on the inside, a bit noisy. But they have these really handcrafted lift buttons, these like huge flowers that you push. Like
Wonderful.
So, yeah, lifts and craft. Sorry, it's been done before. I would challenge the idea that robots are never going to be able to do that, Alexander, but give it a couple of years.
Yeah.
Okay, Marco.
I think it's Fredrik.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Let's
go. Let's go non-linear. Why not?
That's good. So, as a design studio, we really like to challenge materials and also techniques, and we've been sort of trying to push the boundaries of what you can do. And one thing that we did was we developed something which we call extreme stitching, and tried to stitch in wood. And when we had this idea, no one really believed us, so we had to actually buy the sewing machine ourselves in our studio, and then fully develop this technique of stitching in wood. So here you see me and Emma trying to fine-tune one of the machines, and which was a really fun project to work on, because when we showed this at the first time, everybody said, "Yeah, but you're sort of like crazy guys, like you've been standing there and drilling these holes by hand." And then we said, "No, we didn't. It was we did it with the sewing machine." So here you can see one of the pieces that we done, which is for BD Barcelona, and you can see that there's 6 by 6 millimeters of wood stitched together. So it's 12 millimeters wood. And then you have to also have wonderful collaborators that believe in your ideas. So BD, they took this up in production, and then you can imagine that you're actually standing there with this whole piece of wood inside a sewing machine and sewing those layers and layers together. Truly a craft in a way to make this. And but to go back maybe a little bit in time, we have done collaborations with a Swedish company called Garsnäs, which is a wonderful old company, 125 years old. And they asked us to design an Emma armchair, which is a type of chair that's been produced in Sweden for a century, or at least since the 1840s. So this was our interpretation of that armchair. And what we wanted to do that is also sort of like bring on the craft behind it, because even if the chairs that you're sitting in, there's probably someone that's been stitching them and using a sewing machine to stitch it, but you don't always like see the stitches or bring them up front. So we use the stitches as an element to create the whole chair. So it's a soft back chair which doesn't have any wood inside, only textile, and we are actually stitching together the pattern, creating this structure. So it becomes a very flexible backrest in a way. And then coming back to sort of like in a way not doing stitches. This is we call this Succession, and it's a series of products that we've been doing for soon 10 years. and they always develop in their own way. And here is the seamless pattern. So we actually take ropes around shapes and we actually bake it in an oven. And being in this sort of strange place, like that you said, that this has always been a knäckebröd factory. So we also actually been baking furniture.
I was going to say
In the same oven.
Like what you're going to have for your main courses.
Yeah. No, actually, on your main courses, you will actually sit and eat on this porcelain.
Not eat the porcelain.
Not eat the porcelain, like from the porcelain.
Not that weird.
But so, I mean, we like this way of trying different techniques and challenging this. So this was actually the first piece of this way of making things that actually got into production. It was a French company called Petite Couture and Revol that said we would like to have something like this. So we casted our shapes that we did, and they produced this wonderful porcelain that you eat on. It's a long story to tell that one, but it was a really wonderful collaboration to use their knowledge of the 9th generation of porcelain makers to actually go back in time, because they had to bring on their retired people, because they didn't even have the knowledge in the factory to do this, to make the mold of this porcelain. So they were really happy afterwards because they got knowledge back to the factory to do things like this.
And what is your definition of craft?
Craft. I think craft made by hands then, like in a way.
Not robots.
Not robots.
Okay, 2 against 1 so far, Alexander. And tell us a little bit about your connection with Aritco, because they've asked you to start collaborating with them. I know that you haven't got very far into that yet, but when this high-tech lift company approached you, did you go, that's weird, or did you go, that's
No, that's
exciting?
fantastic. We're really excited because it's like we love to bring on new challenges, and I think that to do that you have to put yourself in a new situation, and that's where you can also do something good for someone else, that maybe we have a different perspective that they have, and we're coming together and hopefully gonna make something beautiful.
And you talked about the loss of skills, the potential loss of skills of having to bring back the retired people who knew how to work the machines or to make the production. I mean, that's a huge issue with craft, isn't it, internationally? Luca Nicchetto, who's got a show at Svenska Tenn at the moment of beautiful Murano glass objects. He told me last year when I was talking to him, he's from Murano, the island in the Venetian lagoon which is famous for its glass. He said that the glass-making skills will die out because the owners of the factories haven't been educating young people, that the young people want to leave. I also, that apparently Dale Chihuly, you know, the artist, he's taken a lot of the young people from Murano. So,
but it's interesting in this way that like now there's a table here in the corner that we did for this exhibition, and the company Tresekel that made this for us, they actually had to use their oldest machines in not the new modern that they have. They had to bring on the oldest machines to do that because the precision of the new machines were not good enough. And that's also interesting. Sometimes we're losing things, and I think it's important that we use the knowledge from before to be able to do things today.
But I guess also with your stitched wood, that's the other side of the equation, that you've actually invented a new craft technique that people thought you were a bit mad to even try. Yeah. But actually it was taking a sewing machine and some wood and some thread. There was nothing kind of revolutionary. It was just the bringing together of existing things. So it suggests that there are lots of craft techniques that could be discovered just from looking at what's around us, maybe.
Yeah, I think that. I see it like that. It's lovely to enter a new room, like a door here, and then you sort of like go into that and inspired by that, and new things could come out.
Okay, thank you very much, Marco. Your turn.
Yes. So. I've been doing this for 5 years, almost, since we started Studio Stockholm Architecture. And I mainly work with interiors and product designs. And one of our first big projects was this. This is DICE, owned by EA Games, really big game developer. And the interesting thing here with them that one of the briefs that they told us, the people, they said that we're making this really digital game that everybody is buying or downloading, but the way we work is really analog. We use whiteboards, we use paper, we use pens and things like that. So all that they want to get was a canvas for them to be able to work in a very analog way to produce all these games. So it's really interesting how the picture of them is that they're really digital, but they're working a lot with their hands and also building models in clay and filming everything. All the sound are made by them in the studios, etc. So this is a table, conference table that we've been designing for a Swedish manufacturer called Ragnars. And I would say that our products is mainly the story like this. We see our clients, we see their needs, and one of the biggest problem that we see our clients have in a more flexible way of working these days is that normally one of the biggest expenses is conference tables. They're big, they're really expensive, but our clients always need to change their rooms or change their behavior, change their way of working. And the big conference table are always fixed. So we came up with the idea to make the first really flexible conference table that you can actually put in more pieces in or take them out. So it could be how long you want or how short you want. You just buy another piece and put it in the middle and then you extended it. So it's called plus because there's a little plus in the aluminum profile that you can expand. This is a Swedish law firm called Cederqvist, and we often also design furniture and interiors for them. So what you see here is the diamond table. It's actually just customized for them. It's in polished stainless steel. It's really heavy, and they got lots of them in this office, and they have it as their own kind of design brand. So it's really important how we can help our clients by designing new custom-made projects for them. And this is a company called Net Insight, a really big, like broadcasting development. They broadcast this big, like the Super Bowl or the Olympics, that kind of events. They're working a lot with IT developing the algorithms, and as more or less the same as with DICE, they're working with a digital product, but they're working really with their hands, making all these connections. So they have a 1,000 square meter lab with cables and welding machines, and they normally like putting all these things together. And I think this is the last picture. This is one of our first projects as well. This is an agency that we actually went out there and photographing all these big prints. So all of these areas is totally covered with different prints that we photos and put up there. So one of their brief here was that they have lots of events, so they want to feel this as more or less like a nightclub feeling.
So what's your definition of
Oh,
craft?
sorry, there was one more. Just taking this
I'll
one
be
as well.
back.
I will tell you the craft afterwards. Okay. So this is the last one. This is the mobile operator 3. Their new headquarters in southern part of Stockholm. Really big project that we just finished. The key question here was that they have music as one of their DNAs, and they want all people to hear everything. So when the CEO or the HR or whoever is on the stage, everybody in this whole entire building can hear them talk. So it's an open place for letting all the information reach the coworkers immediately.
Can you guess what my questions are?
And I think that my answer on that is, I think, as Fredrik said, made by hand, but also, sorry to get one.
Everybody is.
The jury
But
has
also, I mean,
decided.
there's also a like blood, sweat, and tears and love into the things that you made by hand. You have the story from the person behind it as well. So I think that's what makes craft really interesting. If you compare craft with a totally industrial made piece.
And a couple of your projects, you touched on something interesting because they were office spaces where people do a craft, but it's like a digital kind of craft. So clearly, you must feel that coding can be a craft, or designing a computer game can be a craft. Does that have the same validity of somebody stitching? Or
no, I think
cutting?
that's something different, but it's some kind of crafting, I think, because it's made by hand and it's made with an approach to achieve something with the product or with the things.
But there are similarities, aren't there? Because if you're an expert, for example, on Indian rugs or Tibetan thakras or something like that, you will be able to know the craftsperson that did the piece because they would leave a little mistake on purpose or a signature or a particular use of color. But coders do that as well, don't they?
Yeah.
They'll often leave a little Easter egg in the code.
Yes, they do a lot. And sometimes they are so well hidden, so there's only the people in that team that knows about it.
Yeah, and I've seen people as well, they pull up the code on a website and they'll go, oh, that's brilliant. And I'll be like, what are you talking about? But all of you, open question to all of you, like, does craft have to be a physical object that involves natural materials? Can it be tech? Can it be something intangible? Can it be digital?
I think it will be in the future a lot more of it than it is today.
And that course, sorry, carry on.
No, because everything gets so much more digital for every year. It's expanding in that area. So.
Yeah, it's like if you asked an artist for 100 years ago, could art be digital? And I think that everybody by then would say no, because art is a painting or art is something else. But we see digital art as well. So.
And we're here to talk about the future of craft. So let's project into the future, the near future, and then even the more distant future. What will happen with craft? We know we have these forces. We have the rise of the robots, the rise of artificial intelligence. We already have mass customization, so you can buy a pair of Nike trainers and it's got your name on it, or it's got your colors, and no human being came into that. You've got like Flyknit, everything. A lot of the products that we consume, the industrial products, have had minimal human intervention in them. So what is the future? If we define craft as something that the human hand does, what is the future of craft? Do you all want to try and answer that question?
Oh, that's can you start?
Fredrik,
That's a small question.
Small questions. My future. I think that sort of like the robots taking over. It's not really here tomorrow, because I still think that we need this. We need the hands behind it, and also like that it's a time-consuming thing as well, as you said sometimes, and tricky to do. That takes almost more time to control someone else to do it than do it yourself, in a way. Like, but yeah, that.
But I think it's also somehow it's something to like balance the context. I mean, we're in this globally industrial world that you can buy, as you more or less said, you can buy anything from which country, just click it on the internet and you get it delivery by to your home. But I mean, it's in a balance of that. I think that craft can be that balance, that you lengthen for the things that you see that a human hand has been touched or make, and so I think it's all the more industrialized and globalized we get, the more we lengthen for the craft and the story behind the project. Or like that.
So in other words, craft is a sort of serves as a sort of comfort as the world gets more and
Yeah, I
more
think so,
technological. Then, but does that mean that we need new craft because you can always just surround yourself with old things? Is there a need to produce craft from our time?
I think definitely. I mean, that's also what's happening today, that we are seeing, as we said, with whatever, if we think coding is a craft, or there's many things that could be a craft that is not like that I've been sitting with a knife and doing it like that. It's also a craft handling, like maybe then the machines in a way, and that will also lead to things as well.
And I mean, craft is part of the history, and if you don't do new things, it's only a history by then. You will lose a lot of time.
And I think also it's a big thing for people that do craft out in the world, is also the health thing, that you really feel well when you do craft, and that will, I guess, never disappear. So just the lust to make a wooden knife or whatever will always be, and like for people that work with it, it's probably also will be, as I talked before, more exclusive. So their work will be even more, what you say, I lost the word.
But it's an interesting idea, though, that craft is perhaps something that humans need for their well-being. So in the future, maybe, there'll be lots, like there are lots of gyms now. There'll be sort of craft gyms where you go and make some kind of wooden spoon or something.
Lovely.
But again, I mean,
There's a lot of nodding over here. Is that something that's already happening?
It's happening already, isn't it? Those creative spaces where you create for your
Makerspace.
Actually, yeah, those craft spaces were really popular in London. Do you remember, like 5, 6, 7 years ago? They don't know what happened to them. I think people, maybe they had no more space in their house for all the things they
people
made.
bought their own 3D printer, maybe. So it sort of took over their home.
Well, they weren't very good.
I mean, 3D
at making
printing is
stuff.
fantastic. I think that totally has changed as a designer, a way of working and thinking and making. It's truly incredible to be part of that sort of almost revolutionary tool. I'm really excited to be here in this moment today, because there's a lot of things that have been happening. For example, you getting a laser cutter, I'm really envy. Like, that would be my next tool in our workshop.
We can be invited to Alexander's place.
We sort of have the workshops, offices, maybe 300 meters from each other, so maybe I will go in there in the evening.
Run over.
Yeah, Christmas is quite a long way away, isn't it? Still?
Yeah.
But it's funny though, because this is sort of this idea that we crave craft. I mean, I often laugh about in the 60s. All of the science fiction films, all of the fashion was all about, in the future we're going to be wearing metal clothes, we're going to be like, the Jetsons and stuff like that. But look at us all, we're all pretty much dressed as if it was 50 years ago. We're like, in the way that, well, sorry, not to insult our sort of stylish cast here, but you know what I mean? It's like, even though we're all professionally involved in things that face towards the future, in terms of the way we present ourselves, we're kind of, apart from you've got an Apple Watch and we've all got phones and so on and so forth, but we're all a bit stuck in the past, aren't we? Which suggests that we find a comfort in familiarity, maybe?
Yeah, and it's also I believe a reaction in like the world always that if it gets too much in front here, then some people start going in the other direction, and of course that will happen when all the 3D printings and everything go through in all layers. Then people will start handcraft a lot as a reaction to the other side. So.
But it's interesting, when you started your talk, Alexander, you talked about, when 3D printing first came along, everyone was saying, like, well, everyone's going to have one in their house. Yeah. Instead of going to the shops, they're just going to go print. Yeah. But that didn't really happen, did it? It became a professional tool. Yeah. So the people who got excited about getting a 3D printer for Christmas were not the kids, but it was you guys.
I mean, it's like you print a thing. It's like if you have a mug, you don't print the mug because you would like to drink from it. Maybe you print the mug to look at it, or maybe you print the mug to make a cast of that mug and create so use it in an industrial process, and that's really interesting.
And sorry.
No, but and I think it's about time, because in 15 years, maybe not everybody has a 3D printer at home, but in one of the lectures I made, one person said once that, oh, that's lovely, because every little village around the world will have their own shopping mall if they have a 3D printer. So, and if we look at it that you can print whatever, then you really can, in this small village outside of Stockholm, you can just print whatever you want. And that it's so much effects in the other end of that for the environmental thinking, it's no transports anymore. You can probably recycle the material and so on. So we get a lot of good stuff out of it. So.
But the 3D printing has been around for quite many years now, but it's still the nerds like us that's really into it. I mean, the people in the city that you were talking about, they don't really use 3D printing. I mean, it's there, but it's not. They're not.
No, but today, because of it, it's still too expensive to print. But
it's quite. It's quite cheap to buy the machine. But you can like.
Yeah, but the day when it's the same price to print a plastic chair, for example, instead of mold it at like IKEA, when that have the same price, then no one will make the molds anymore because they are too expensive. So it's about time, and I think it's maybe 15 years away. Then we will see a completely other production in all the industries. So.
It's funny, isn't it? Because earlier on in the talk, the three of us agreed that your definition of craft was wrong.
Yeah.
And the 3D printing wasn't craft, but we've ended up talking about 3D printing, so I think you sort of won by the back door. But maybe a final point, what do you think the relationship between craft and skill is? Because if you think about craft in the past, then people had to do craft, because if you lived in a remote village, you didn't have the money to buy furniture, there was no one you could buy the furniture from, there was no mail order, there was no internet or something like that, so you had to make your chair. And maybe you were good at making a chair, or maybe you were really, really bad at making a chair. And then this whole idea, now technology has got to the point where it democratized things. So I think people got very excited about maker spaces because it meant everyone could go and make a chair. But then they found that, actually, if it was me, I'm not very good at making chairs, actually. And with the 3D printer thing, maybe the same thing happened, that, you buy the 3D printer. We got sent one, and it was like, yay, and then my first thing came out, and it was like, oh my God, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I think I'll stick to writing. So that maybe at least it means that even if we're not sure about the future of craft, I think the future of designers must be quite secure, because you're good at what you do, and then so a new technology comes along like 3D printing. For a minute, you get really scared that everyone's going to be doing your job for you, and then you look at the mess they made, and you think, well, hang on.
and that was exactly what I meant in the beginning there with the graphic industry, because that happened everybody start doing the brochures and things by themselves, and it looked like shit. And then it ended up that they took in a graphic designer and made it good.
Yeah, and in fact, my industry, media, was one of the first, was the first industry to be revolutionized by technology before music. I still have a job.
Yeah.
Good sign.
Good.
Right. Are we going to do questions? Is that a good idea? Or do you want to eat? I noticed this side of the room, they've already finished. We noticed. Yeah, you guys have been really good. I have a question. When's the rest of the food arriving? No, not.
In Finland, there's an experiment now of withdrawing the crafts education in school, and we're discussing it also in Sweden. And my question is, if we take away that from the school schedule, what happens to the understanding of what a piece of wood is or a piece of textile? And in the end, would that affect us as consumers? Because as you experienced, you're shit at doing these things. You have to maybe to discover that yourself. So if you know that it's very hard to make a butter knife, then you will be able to pay for a really good one. But if you don't interact with the material, you will end up as a quite lousy consumer. You don't know what to pay for. That's my question. What do you say about that?
I don't think it's a question. I totally agree. I mean,
Yeah.
and I mean, look at, for example, look at the kids. The trend the last year is to do slime. It's a part of. I mean, they also lengthen to do something with their hands, and they watch YouTube, see how do you make the slime, and then they go and destroy the whole bathroom by doing it. But I mean, also we discussed that today during the furniture fair. Swedish furniture manufacturers versus Danish manufacturers. I mean, there has been none new Swedish furniture manufactured during the last, I don't know, 20 years maybe. But in Denmark, there's a lot of them. But they also have architecture and design in school. So that's my...
I have to sorry, a little anecdote. When I took my bathroom stuff out when I got to my hotel in Stockholm on Monday night, and I got my little travel toothpaste out, and I squeezed it, and it was full of glitter. Because my daughter must have been using it to make slime. It's like red sparkly toothpaste.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Does anyone else have a response to that?
Yeah, but I think it's about education to the public in a way, the awareness of that. And I think in Sweden we have, at least when we are growing up, we have sort of craft and woodworking in school. Like we teach the kids to. Yes, and that will be terrible. I think. I mean, it's like then you could take away sports and you should take away music and math and whatever. I mean, it's part of the whole thing that we need to be able to understand everything around us.
And not only for the creativity. I believe it's good for your mathematics also if you work with wood. That's really.
And back to what you said before, for people's mental health, because in the UK they've taken a lot of the creative subjects off the curriculum, and they found that that the mental health of children has got worse. I mean, especially when there's the pressures of social media and all of those kind of things. That actually cutting a piece of wood, learning to play an instrument is really good for your mind. Cool. Any more questions?
Do you think this is like a conversation that continues throughout the ages? For example, 100 years ago, William Morris was sort of fighting against the same thing, trying to protect the craft industries. Continues this conversation.
Oh, me? Yeah. I think the question is, have humans been rambling on about this for forever and ever and ever? And the questioner made the comment about William Morris. But I think William Morris 100 years ago was a reactionary. There was a movement to stop change. I don't think any of us are here saying we want to stop change. I think we're just saying, like, we don't want to let go of all the stuff that came before at the same time. I think generally you've all embraced change, right, on this panel and technology. You get really excited about it, Max. You want the new machine.
I mean, we are sort of excited of the two sides of it, because we also need to keep the knowledge and the industrial processes and so on. And also it's a lot about the workers. Like for us, it's a lot about the workers in the factory. And it's actually a lack of that it's people that can work and take care of the craft and the industry. So
And I mean, if you don't support that type of industry,
and
the knowledge will die one generation away, I think.
Yeah, and if we don't design these pieces that actually someone could produce, then also it will disappear.
But also, it's as you say, it has been in all times, these questionings. And 20 years ago, I were in a furniture factory down in Småland, and the old product chief has quitted, and the company said that it's not possible to get a new one. No young people is educating in this field anymore. But today that company has a 30-year-old guy that has that position. So it's things happening anyhow, so even if you're afraid of it. And I hope, as your question, that even if they take it away, that after a few years they realize that, oh, this was wrong. And also because of that, when these kind of techniques reach the market, then people will have so much more interest of it. So I guess in the end it's...
And did you ask the question because you have a particular viewpoint on that?
Not really. It just seems to me that, yeah, it's a continuing thing. Like technology and craft can't exist together. There's always a reaction between this relationship.
And I also think that, I mean, we as architects, we have a lot of power. I mean, we specify products for, I don't know, many, many millions of euros every year. So it's also a responsibility for us to embrace craft, because we are the ones that can make the craftsmanship stay and embrace it.
And maybe as a final point, when the robots do take over, maybe they will want craft.
Yeah.
That's true.
They're just tools. They're just new tools that you still have to learn how to use. Or, I don't know. And maybe that's going back to William Morris, the whole idea that it's been going on because new tools have always been challenging. If it's the sewing machine or if it's, I don't know, whatever.
Well, I don't think it will be too long before we have a robot on the panel. And when we say to the robot, like, you're just a tool to help us, I think the robot might look at me with a sort of disdainful look on his face and say, actually, you got it the wrong way round, sunshine. Okay, really interesting conversation. As I said, this is definitely the strangest and most curiously Alice in Wonderland-like talk I've ever been involved in. I'm very, very guilty that your cabbage is getting cold, everybody. I would hate for it to... I'm joking. But why don't we have Fredrik go and play us out with the piano? Is that
why
doable?
not? I can do that.
Have a round, like a complete surprise for the evening?
That's possible.
Can we keep the live stream rolling for this? And we're going to dance, right?
I think it was a nice ending.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
I need a stool. Can I have a stool?